Hi all, good evening. Welcome back after a small gap of we have purchased some extra facilities, extra resources. I'm sure a lot of you should have a nice experience. Uh, Let me give you some small basic instructions. A lot of you are all already aware of these instructions. Uh, Ensure you see in small screen. I don't want you to see it in mega views and all. You might have some challenges of buffering. Again, whenever you find it is buffering, it is not up to your optimum level, request you to go back a few minutes later. So maybe once our flow is set and when we are running at 6th or 8th minute, I would recommend you to come 1 or 2 minutes, continuously increasing the speed. Okay, understand now in all these times, what best can be done by us, we are trying at our level best. No. After our 4-day session on various topics, be it introduction to levy of GST, or it is going to be your scope of supply, followed by levy of GST, and the last session on reverse charge mechanism on goods and services. Today on day 5, we will take up time and value of supply. This where one minute. Bala, audible, where sorry, as far as day 5 is concerned, time and value of supply, and this topic has some differences as far as the courses are concerned. From a CMA CSinter perspective, yes, the topics that to be discussed are not applicable. I have highlighted in the presentation itself. The presentation is there on the description link. I would request you doubly, and you are following with me, give a thumbs up so that it encourages me. Consciously, chat box is removed because numbering that I have, a speed test that I run, and your thumbs up that I see over there in the dashboard. Now, before me getting into today's discussion, upfront caution, upfront discussion. As far as from a CAinter perspective, CA intermediate exam perspective. From a CA intermediate perspective, section 14 of CGST Act, that is to say, determination of rate of tax, section 14 of CGST Act is not applicable for exam. Similarly, the valuation rules, starting from rule number 27, ending with rule number 35, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, one set. 30, 31A, 32, 32A, 33, 34, 35, another set. Okay. Now, as far as these valuation rules are concerned, what I would recommend here is the valuation rules are not applicable for CAinter, because these two topics are not late when I go there also. Section 14 is a easy section. When I go there, I will highlight there also. Section of us is going to be last 15-20 minutes of our discussion is going to be more to do with valuation rules. When I go there also, I will highlight. Kindly from a CAinter perspective and a beginner's perspective, if some of you are all viewing, from CMA inter perspective, CSinter perspective, and all those people want to learn GST law from a beginner perspective, yes, the discussion that we are going to make here on time and value of supply, all are relevant discussions. Okay. Now, you don't need to even bother. If you go to the respective area in PPT, the topic heading will cleverly say this topic is not applicable for CAinter. This topic is not applicable for CAinter. Two places it will come. That's all. But my recommendation to all of you is come 2-3 minutes, preferably 3 minutes below me, minus me. Then definitely it will be easy viewable. See in small screen. If you know how to reduce the video quality, you can go and see it. Nothing new here. No great background. Nothing extra I'm going to share. But for discussion on the topic associated with it. Coming back here. Getting into a first topic discussion on time of supply. A genuine doubt will come to a student why a topic called as time of supply is required. Okay. Now recollect your discussion of levy. Section 9 of C and this sections has highlighted that tax will be paid in the manner prescribed as per section 12 and 13 of CGST Act, meaning thereby the time of supply. At what point in time I have to pay tax shall be determined in case of goods as per time of supply of goods. In case of time of supply of goods, as far as time of supply of goods is concerned, if you're going to draw a flow chart, assuming time of supply on the center, first left diagram will say, in case of time of supply of goods, it is handled by section 12. Towards your right, a next diagram would say, goods in turn have 5 further breakup. Time of supply of services have 5 further breakup. Now, before getting into the topic, before learning all those small points associated entries on all this, let's first discuss. Let's first know the need for time of supply. The moment there is a supply and that supply is confirmed, there is a intrastate supply or there is going to be a interstate supply. The moment supply is getting confirmed, the moment supply is confirmed, intra or interstate supply, immediately a next question is rise. When I have to pay tax to government? That for the answer of when I have, so when I have to pay tax? Now, to this question, section 12 of time of supply of goods discuss about when I have to pay tax in case of goods. Section 13 of time of supply of services discuss about in case of services when I have to pay tax. Now, more importantly, whether at the time of completing my services I have to pay tax, or at the time of raising invoice I have to pay tax, or at the time of receipt of payment I have to pay tax. When I have to pay tax, a doubt comes. For that purposes, all that I want to drive home here is a decision is taken based on this section. Similarly, time of supply of goods, when I have to pay tax, at the time of rising invoice, at what point in time exactly the tax need to be paid? A decision associated with it is taken based on this provision called as time of supply. In time of supply of goods, you can broadly divide this time of supply of goods, section 12, into 5 parts. time of supply of goods, gender. Time of supply of goods in case of additional consideration. Time of supply of goods in case of others. In simple term, generally, how time of supply of goods need to be determined: reverse charge, followed by voucher, additional consideration, others. 5 parts discussion we will have in time of supply of goods. In case of time of supply of goods, when 5-part discussions we have, now I'm sure all of you would have downloaded the material from the description link. When you have downloaded, the manner in which I am discussing, you come and follow along. Point for our discussion is, in case of time of supply of goods, generally. Section 12, subsection 2. Discuss about time of supply of goods generally. Time of supply of goods generally will be date of issue of invoice by the supplier or date on which payment is received by the supplier. Of these two, whichever is earlier. In fact, a further point to be noted down here is, there is a statutory time limit to issue invoice. 31 of CGST Act comes out and discuss that in case of goods, invoice has to be issued before removal of goods from factory. I would rather say at least before removal of goods, invoice has to be raised. First invoice raised, next goods removed, okay, complied with the law. Invoice is also raised, goods are also removed, yes, complied with the law. Goods removed, but invoice not raised, not possible. Section 31, which discuss about a statutory time limit, which says invoice has to be raised within the time prescribed. What is the time prescribed in case of goods? In case of goods, the time prescribed is very simple. In case of goods, the time prescribed is date of removal of goods. The last day of removal of goods is nothing but the day in which goods are removed. That becomes your time of supply. So, date of invoice or the statutory time limit for issuing invoices or date of receipt of payment. Of this three, date of receipt of payment by whom? Supplier. Supplier. If he is supplying goods, he receives payment. Of this three, whichever is earlier is going to be your time of supply. But a point need to be noted down here is, though section 12 subsection 2 highlights all this, though section 12 subsection 2 in nutshell say the day in which invoice raised or date of removal or date of receipt of payment, of this three, whichever is earlier is going to be time of supply. When we read this section 12.2, issued as per section 12, which is notification 66/2017, which exempts all those advances received by a supplier of goods from payment of GST. Very interesting to note. Are you a supplier of goods? Have you received advances? That is, before even supplying goods, have you received money? If in case some of you are going to say, yes, we have received money before even supplying goods, then the law simply comes out and says, very comfortably, the law comes out and says, in case of the day in which advance received exempts them from payment of tax on that day. To put it in a different way, section says, yes, today you are liable to pay tax, but an exemption notification comes and waives the person from paying tax, and the exemption notification is effective way back. Receives advance payment on 10/1/2020. For the advance received by him on 10/1/2020, he supplied the goods on 20/1/2022 when we apply verbatim. Date of invoice is 20/1/2020. Date of receipt of payment is 10/1/2020. Of these two, whichever is earlier, we will say 10/1/2020, the person is liable to pay tax. That becomes the time of supply of goods generally for this case. However, the exemption notification will simply come out and say that in case of this transaction, they are exempted from payment of tax at the time of receipt of advance. That is to say, he is not liable to pay tax on 10/1/2020. He is liable to pay tax. He is exempted. Very simple, which means generally time of supply of goods is going to be the day in which invoice is issued. 2-3 points I want you to highlight. The exemption notification that we read is GST Act. That is to say, if a composition levy person receives an advance, he is still liable to pay tax under your date of receipt of advance. The exemption notification is not applicable for composition levy person. The exemption notification is applicable only for your section 9 normal levy person. Make yourself comfortable. These are all fine-tuned points on the exemption notification or in time of supply of goods generally. This sums up the first discussion of it. Let me repeat it. You have been following all those sessions. If I spend extra time, there will be little purpose. Let me again repeat it and caution you. If you are good in your section 12, mark my word, section 13 will be verbatim. Section 13 will be almost a copy paste. Section 13 will be a replica of your earlier section 12. So I would strongly recommend you to take up your own time in understanding it and follow with me along with the presentation on your hand. Coming back here, in case of time of supply of goods, in case of reverse charge mechanism. Time of supply of goods in case of reverse charge mechanism. How time of supply is determined? See, in case of reverse charge mechanism, I think you all are now mastered in reverse charge mechanism. You all know who is not going to pay tax. Correct. Supplier is not going to pay tax. Rather, who will pay tax under reverse charge mechanism? Recipient will pay tax under reverse charge mechanism. So, points for our discussion is, in case of reverse charge mechanism, that is to say, date of receipt of goods. Let me repeat. Date of receipt of goods. In case of reverse charge mechanism, a purchaser of a cashew nut or a purchaser of all those BD leaf, tendo leaf tobacco, then the purchaser, being the recipient of goods, he is liable to pay tax under section 9(3), read along with the relevant notification. That and all is understandable. Now, when he has to pay tax, for that answer is date of receipt of goods, the day in which he receives the goods at his factory, godown, whatever location. Date of receipt of goods or day in which the supplier makes payment to the recipient. Date of receipt of goods, date of payment, or the third day. Date immediately following 30 days from whichever is earlier. So, a person purchased cashew nuts from where? From Mangalore. The supplier is an agriculturist. Supplier issued a document that he is sending 100 bags of cashew nut. Good. The recipient is in Tamil Nadu. From Mangalore, the goods was loaded in the lorry and the lorry started on a particular day. Let's say 5/1/2020. Lorry reached Chennai on 7/1/2020, or goods are received by the recipient on 7/1/2020, followed by payment was immediately made to the respective vendor on 10/1/2020. So in our case, date of invoice by supplier 5/1/2020. Date of receipt of goods by the recipient is 7/1/2020. Date of payment by the recipient is 10/1/2020. Given the facts, also given the information, the goods purchased is cashew nut and the recipient is liable to pay tax, I think you all can understand it very simply. Date of receipt of goods 7/1, date of payment 10/1, followed by from the date of invoice 31 days. Invoice was issued 31st day technically. So 25 days in January, followed by another 5 days, 6/2/2020. Date of receipt of goods 7/1/2020. Date of payment 10/1/2020, or day immediately following 30 days, which is going to be 6/2/2020. Of this three, whichever is what? Earlier. Whichever is earlier, date of receipt of goods is earlier. So, they are liable to pay tax on 7/1/20. So, through an illustration, I tried to explain to you, but make a point or note a point here is, in case of reverse charge mechanism, those identified 8 goods, if the recipient purchased those goods, time of supply will be determined based on section 12, subsection 3 as explained above. Similarly, in case of date of payment, we have some challenges. Environment, situation like this is possible. How to overcome it? So that is why government told, be it receipt of money or be it payment. Let me repeat, be it date of receipt, be it date of payment. Date of receipt means money comes to the supplier. Date of payment means money paid by the supplier. Both. Date of entry in books of accounts or date of receipt of money, day in which money is credited to the bank account in case of date of receipt, day in which money is debited to the bank or debited on the bank account in case of payment. Of these 2 dates, whichever is earlier. Actually, a check was issued to the Mangalore agriculturist. Entry made in books of account was 10/1/2020. Actually, the check reached the Mangalore agriculturist and the Mangalore agriculturist deposited in the bank account, and the bank account of the trader got debited on 13/1/2020. Now, what is the date of payment? The day in which entry made 10/1 or the day in which check got debited, which is 13/1. Law simply told, date of entry or date of debit in books of account, date of debit in bank account, of these two, whichever is earlier. So, in case of be it date of receipt of payment or date of payment, coming back here, this sums up your whole discussion relating to time of supply of goods reverse charge. So, just a small summation. Time of supply of goods generally is going to be the day in which goods are invoiced by the supplier. In case of advance money received, for goods, those advances received by a normal levy person is exempted. In case of composition levy person, he is liable to pay tax on the date of receipt of advance or issue of invoice of this two, whichever is earlier. In case of reverse charge, the date of payment or date of receipt of goods or day immediately following 30 days from date of invoice of this three, whichever is earlier, is going to be your time of supply. Followed by determination of time of supply in case of vouchers. Section 12, subsection 4 of your CGST Act discuss about time of supply of goods in case of voucher. So, time of supply of goods in case of voucher. How it can be determined? Very simply, it can be determined. So, in case of voucher, ask a very fundamental question. In case of voucher, ask a very fundamental question that whether supply is identified or supply is not identified at the time of issue of voucher. Let me repeat it. Whenever a voucher is sold by an organization, a lot of us are simply comes out and says, in case of voucher, what do we mean by voucher, sir? In case some of you still have that doubt, voucher is a piece of paper sold by a particular organization to a person, which can be given as a gift to another person, and the other person can redeem this paper against purchase of some of the goods or purchase of some of the services. Instead of you using your cash or card for payment, first you will use that gift voucher, and then you will use those cash or card for the differential payment. So basically, you can think of Amazon voucher or Flipkart voucher, or you marked showrooms voucher. So whatever be it, or some jewelry shop vouchers. You have different voucher. It cannot be what to say this that which cannot be freeze. When it comes to date of issue of voucher will be time of supply. Sir, what do you mean by voucher? Supply identified. See, with that voucher, I can buy only that item. If I say, then you have to treat that as supply is identified. For example, prestige showrooms are more than about 100 showrooms they have in and around India. That prestige showroom sell a voucher for 1,000 rupees. The fellow went to the showroom, saw a kettle, he liked it. The person who has the voucher, he liked it. So he told, I want to buy this kettle. Kettle is 1,300 rupees. This fellow gave the voucher. 1,000 rupees was redeemed. Balance 300 rupees, this individual paid and took back the product to the home. When the person is only a particular item, which means supply is identified. So, in case of date of issue of voucher, in case of supply identified, time of supply will be date of issue of voucher. In case if supply of goods is not identified, date of redemption of voucher is going to be time of supply. So, a voucher is sold with a condition only a pressure cooker of prestige alone can be bought by the voucher. Then the supply is identified in the voucher. So the day in which the showroom sells the voucher, that day becomes time of supply. Another voucher is sold by in which the voucher comes for redemption. On that day, they are liable to pay tax. This is about your voucher, which will be verbatim for your section 30. Moving forward, in case of additional consideration. Consideration, if you think, additional consideration means nothing but where penalty, because it involves various other payments which are mandated under the law. A best in class example to you could be one of the conditions of the credit sale was after sale being made by the person, within 30 days, payment need to be made to the supplier. The supplier has issued the goods with the condition that the payment need to be made to the supplier within 30 days. 35 days pass by, 45 days pass by, 60 days pass by. After a lot of fighting, at last, the supplier received the payment from recipient. By the time it was 73 days. Original time was what? 30 days. Now, what the supplier did is, because the payment was delayed by more than 30 days, he raised a debit note requesting the recipient to pay a interest. Then, what is the time of supply for that interest, which is a additional consideration for a original supply? Yes or no? Already there is a supply. For that original supply, there is an additional consideration. Date of receipt of additional consideration. Let me repeat. In case of additional consideration, time of supply will be date of receipt of additional consideration. The day in which additional consideration is received, that day would be your time of supply. For example, if the additional consideration interest debit note is issued on 18/1/2020, however, the payment for the same is received on 24/2/2020. Look at that wording. Interest debit note for additional consideration was issued on 18/1/2020. Consideration was received on 24/1/2020. Time of supply will be the day in which additional consideration is received. 24/2/2020 will become your time of supply. In case of additional consideration, the day in which interest, late fee, penalty, or any other additional consideration received by the supplier will become time of supply. Now, it is a case where not covered by general entry, not covered by reverse charge, not covered by voucher, not covered by additional consideration. Then what it is? Others. What is this others? Not covered. It is not a general entry. So invoices not issued. So not covered under voucher. It is not additional consideration, not covered here. In case something, this 4 is not applicable, then there is something called as others. So in case of others, other situations or others, time of supply will be date on which that period return has to be filed. Date on which periodical return has to be filed, or date on which the respective GST is paid. Sir, when others will be applicable? Some of us will have doubt. In a genuine case, you will not apply others. Let's take a situation. One of the conditions of section 31 31, tax invoice. One of the conditions of section 31 is whenever you remove goods from factory, whenever you remove goods from warehouse, it should be under a cover of tax invoice. A supplier from his factory removed the goods to another supplier without invoice. The truck was intercepted by an officer. Officer gets on, GST officer gets on of his vehicle, search the vehicle of the respective goods carrying vehicle and ask for bill. The respective van driver or lorry driver scratch his head, which means what? Statutory requirement under section 31 is complied, not complied. Not complied. Sir, is it an offense? Will it be penalized? Will the owner of the company can be penalized? Yes. Section 122 of CGST Act says a person should not remove goods without a cover of invoice. It is an offense. There is a penalty for it. Now bring all that knowledge here. If a person engage in fraudulent transaction like this, and the officer comes and identify those transactions, sir, how officer will come? Don't ask. See, officer knows everything. Officer is a superman only. Okay, you have to believe it. Now, point here is officer knows who will do what kind of fraud. See, it's as simple as that. The moment a regular kind of theft activity happens, the respective police station know who's the thief itself. To that extent, they will have control. See, these are all patterns. These are all people, pattern, fraud, methods. Many things are there. See, we see many things. We across various films, we see many aspects. These fellows will do fraud like this only. Government knows. Government will exactly go and identify those fellows. Now the point for discussion is, if one such catch has happened, they see 100 boxes of sanitizer, talk of the town now. Okay, 100 boxes. 100 boxes means what? Inside each box, sanitizer will be sold approx 200 rupees. Now think the size of the consignment. Okay, 200 rupees into 10,000. That is your size of the consignment. Okay, so much worth of goods goes in a lorry without bill. Officer identifies it. Then look at the point here. Then they will say, you agree to the fraud and pay tax immediately. Then the day in which they pay tax, that becomes what? Time of supply. The fellow says, no, I forgot to take the bill, I missed the bill, this say that I will meet you in court, all that stuff, nuisance and all. If they say, leave it. You have removed the goods today. This month is March month. March month return filing due date is April 20th. Sir, how I will know? When you go to return column, you will know. Every month, next month 20th, before 20th, return has to be filed. So the return filing due date for March month is 20th April. Time of supply is 20th April. This others, or whenever time of supply cannot be determined, otherwise called as others, when you can use, when it is not covered by this four situation. It is not covered by general, it is not covered by reverse charge, voucher, or additional consideration. Then you can use your others. This stepping into time of supply of services. As far as time of supply of services is concerned, of CGST Act discuss about time of supply of services. There also section 13(1) comes out and says the liability to pay GST on services shall be at that I have to pay tax will be determined based on time of supply of services. Here we have to bifurcate the situations like this. Like how for goods you had a statutory time limit for raising invoice as per section 31, which is at the time of removal of goods. Even for section 13, time of supply of service, you have a statutory time limit. Section 31, section 31 of CGST Act discuss about a statutory time limit for claiming credit. Section 31 of CGST Act discuss what statutory time limit. In case of services, I'll rephrase it. In case of all services, invoice, tax invoice has a services completed within 30 days, just simply within 30 days, time of supply need to be determined. In case of banking and financial services and insurance services alone, invoice can be raised within 45 days from time of supply. 45 days from completion of service. So, a very important question here is, has the invoice been raised, as the invoice is being raised within the time prescribed? Now, if the invoice is issued within the time prescribed, then time of supply will be date of issue of invoice, date of receipt of payment of these two, whichever is earlier. Let me repeat. If in law simply says time of supply will be date of issue of invoice or date of receipt of payment from supplier, payment by the supplier, of these two, whichever is earlier is going to be time of supply. Here, a very careful point need to be addressed by us is, sir, if invoice is not raised within the time prescribed, will there be a possibility? Yes, they forgot to raise invoice, or they raised invoice but failed to give it, or they, for various dispute, it was kept pending. 101 reasons you will have for not raising invoice within the time prescribed. If an invoice is not raised within the time prescribed, then time of supply will be date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment of these two, whichever is earlier. So, it is not among the three, whichever is earlier. Hope you could able to understand there is a small interplay between date of invoice and a statutory time limit. If invoice is issued within the statutory time limit of 30 days from date of completion of service or date of receipt of payment of this two, whichever is early. In case, if both the cases, if it does not apply, sir, I have never raised the invoice at all. Problem here. Supplier has not recorded the supply related activity. However, the recipient has recorded the transaction associated with it. Then time of supply will be date on which recipient has recorded the transaction in his books of account. Date on which recipient has recorded the transaction in books of account will be time of supply in a case where supplier has not recorded the transaction. Let me repeat it. We'll take up some example and close it, because in my view 13.2 and 13.3 are the most important. 13.4, 13.5, 13.6 almost the same like 12.4, 12.5, 12.6. No changes. These two entries alone you have changed. We'll take it up in a little more series. Services completed on 31/12/2019. Services completed on 31/12/2019. Invoice was raised on 10/1/2020. What is your time of service? So what first we will do? From completion of service 31/12/2019. Has the invoice issued within the time prescribed? What is the time limit? Normal services will assume 30 days. As the invoice issued within 30 days. Yes, ticker. Then time of supply will be date of issue of invoice, which is 4/1/2020, or the day which I receive money, which will be what? 10/1/2020. Of these two, whichever is earlier. So time of supply will be 4/1/2020. Let me continue with the same example. Services completed on 31/12/2020. Invoice raised on 4/1/2020. Payment received on 20/12/2019. Services completed on 31/12/2019. Invoice raised on 4/1/2020. Payment received on 20/12/2019. Time of supply will be what? Invoice is raised within the time prescribed. So 4/1/2020 or 20/12/2019. Good. Take a third situation. Services completed on 31/12/2019. Invoice was raised on normal services, not banking and financial services, normal services. 31/12/2019, completion is over. Invoice was raised on 5/2/2020. Payment was received on 10/2/2020. So, if you look here, invoices raised within the time prescribed, not raised within the time prescribed. Invoices not raised within the time prescribed. Hence, time of supply will be invoices not raised within the time prescribed. Hence, time of supply will be date of completion of service, which is 31/12/2019, or date of payment 10/2/2020. Of this two, whichever is earlier. I'm sure a lot of you will got it right by this time. Okay. What is the most important challenge for us is when we prepare so much for exams and go, our exam question will be like this. If you want, you also make a note of it. Mr. A supplied the services and completed it on 31/12/2019, against which a part payment was made on 20/12/2019. A part payment of 25% was made on 20/12/2019. And the invoice for the said activity was generated after completion on 5/1/2020, and the balance payment of 75% was received on 10/1/2020. Let me repeat. I have given you 4 dates here. Services was completed on 31/12/2019. A 25% advance of a 1 lakh rupee contract was received on 20/12/2019. And the invoice was raised on 5/1/2020. And the balance 75% payment, easy problem and all you did. You're asking us to do a tough problem. Mark my word, this has already appeared for 4 marks in CAinter exam. See, I'm very clear. I don't want to lie unnecessarily. This is the problem that has appeared. So point here is, can you carefully note the point? Services completed on 31/12/2020. Right in the middle. Services completed on 31/12/2020. Invoice. Invoice is raised when? 5/1/2020. Good. Invoice is raised within the time prescribed. Satisfied. Okay. Come this. Payment. Payment has two splits. Yes or no? 25% payment received on 2012/2019. 75% payment received on 10/1/2020. So you will have one time of supply or two time of supply. You will have two time of supply. What do you mean by two time of supply? For the receipt of advance payment on 2012/2019, one time of supply will be there for 25,000 rupees. 1 lakh contract we told, 25%, 25,000 rupees. And for the balance, you are liable to pay tax. Balance 75,000. 1 lakh only bill will rise. But already you pay 25,000. No. You are liable to pay only balance 75,000. 75,000. 1 lakh bill will be raised. Since all yourself comfortable, your exam problems are like this one. So, points for our discussion. Prepare in this note. I have two more points to discuss on this front. Now, of course, one point we have already discussed. It's worth repeating again. We everywhere use the word date of receipt of payment, date of receipt of payment, date of receipt of payment. Date of receipt of payment means what? Very simple. The day in which my bank account is credited, or the day in which I make entry in books of accounts of this two, whichever is earlier. The day in which my bank account is credited, or the day in which my bank account is credited, or the day in which the money is credited into my bank account of this two, whichever is earlier. In the same example, that 25,000 rupees entry was made on 16/12/2019. Account got credited on 20/12/2019. Then you will select as date of receipt of payment, not as 2012, the day in which money credited, the day in which entry made in books of accounts. Entry was made on which date? 16/12/2019. Of you know, but we have to discuss about it. That's in case of some time after providing services, we will get some excess money. See, your telephone bill amount might be 960 rupees. Postpaid bill for a minute thing. You went to the payment solution center or the payment collection center and gave 1,000 rupees to 500 rupee note. They say, sir, we don't have change. So what you told, okay, credit my account for 1,000. Your account got credited for 1,000. A most careful point here is, account got credited for 1,000, that and all okay. Extra 40 rupees, that's the supplier of service has not received. Is it not advance money? Is he not liable to pay tax? Correct. Now, if that be the background, this section 13 subsection 2 in it proviso says, wherever there is excess payment up to rupees 1,000, wherever there is excess payment up to rupees 1,000, then they receive the money or the date of raising of subsequent invoice of this two at the option the subsequent bill, at the option of the supplier, it is allowed. So, points for our discussion, points for our absolute discussion here is, in case of, wherever in case of payments, wherever payment is been, wherever excess payment is made and the excess payment is only up to 1,000. See, if the excess amount goes beyond 1,000, then the day in which they receive the money, the day in which they receive the advance payment, that will become time of supply. In case wherever they receive a money and the place where they receive the money is less than 1,000, they have the option. Can we move forward? Yes. Additionally, you may need to learn something about called as continuous supply of goods and continuous supply of services. See, sometimes service will be provided continuously. Of continuous supply of services, law says in case of continuous supply of goods or continuous supply of services will be treated as time of supply. Let me repeat. In case of continuous supply of goods or a completion of a particular activity would be treated as your time of supply. Let's take a case of a rental contract. In a rental contract, when service will be completed, after 11 months rental tenure, it will get completed. But for the purpose of rent, once every month is over, rent will be continued. Yes or no? That same here. The moment a period continues, rent will be continued. So when the moment they stop rental, the moment they start receiving your rental, every month will become a time of supply. You do not wait for completing the service. Every month, every event, here monthly they'll get rental, so monthly event. So my intention is just take a construction contract. You will not wait until the completion of house. Okay. Once basement is over, you will collect one money. Once first floor is over, you will collect another money. Once second floor is over, you will collect another money. So completion of each stage will be treated as completion of service. This is one point we have to remember in case of your completion of services. Followed by section 13.3 discuss about in case of time of supply of services, reverse charge. How to determine time of supply of service in case of reverse charge. Like how goods are all liable for reverse charge. More than 20 or so services are liable under reverse charge. All of you know 20 plus services are liable under reverse charge. When 20 plus services are liable under reverse charge, how to determine time of supply for all these reverse charge? Determination of time of supply for all these reverse charge was based on some bandwidth issue. Time of supply of services. Like how goods the recipient are liable to pay tax. Likewise, for 20 services, the recipient of the service is liable to pay tax. When the recipient is liable to pay tax, 60 days, a date immediately following 60 days from date of invoice. So, time of supply of services is going to be date of payment to supplier of service or a date immediately following 60 days from the date of invoice. A date immediately following 60 days from date of invoice or date of payment to the supplier. For example, an advocate agrees to provide a service on behalf of a company. The respective company started consuming the services of advocate, and the advocate has issued his invoice on 10/12/2019. The advocate has issued the invoice on 10/12/2019. So, points for our discussion is, in case of all those services provided by the advocate, he mentioned that raise the invoice for 50,000. Payment was made by the supplier, recipient, not supplier. Payment was made by the recipient to the advocate on 10/1/2020. So this is why they make payment. If they make payment beyond 60 days, then 60 days from date of invoice, then 61st day will become time of supply. So a special section applicable only in case of reverse charge mechanism of time of supply of services. Recollect, when it comes to goods, you had 3 entries: receipt of goods, date of payment to supplier, or date immediately following 60 days. Of these two, whichever is earlier. In case of associated enterprise. Sir, what do we mean by associated enterprise? Very simple. Holding company and subsidiary company. In case of associated enterprise, where the holding company is located outside India, subsidiary companies are located outside India, there is the import of service. So from foreign country, services are received by a person in India. The fellow is located in foreign country is holding company. The fellow is located in India, where an Indian recipient is going to be your price. The section 13(3) proviso comes out and says, date of entry in books of accounts or date of payment of this two, whichever is earlier, is going to be time of supply. Let me repeat. In case of associated enterprise, where the supplier of the service is located in foreign country, recipient is in India, time of supply will be date of entry in books of accounts by the recipient in India, or the day in which actually the recipient pays. Don't be bothered. Reverse charge means date of payment or 60-day immediately following date of invoice. That is there. That is the parent section, which is 13(3). 13(3) proviso additionally gives a condition. In case of associated enterprise, before even payment, if you make entry, that is sufficient. It is treated as time of supply. Done. This is applicable only in case of associated enterprise between outside India and India. Between India, you will not have this discussion. 13(4) talks about time of supply of service in case of voucher. If the supply is identified, date of issue of voucher is time of supply. If supply is not identified, date of redemption of voucher would be treated as time of supply. I think we have discussed enough. Earlier, we have to identify the goods. Now you have to identify the services. Voucher is a document which can be exchanged on behalf of your consideration, or it is treated at par with consideration. In case of additional consideration, very important to note. In case of additional consideration, time of supply, in case of additional consideration, time of supply will be the day in which actually you receive what? Additional consideration. Like what you can happen for goods, services also, there can be interest, penalty, late fee. One very regular example I will share. In a postpaid billing, telephone billing, you have to make payment within a due date. If you don't make payment within the due date, a small late fee is collected. At the time of raising bill, telephone company cannot estimate how many people will pay late or this person will pay correctly or late. What they will do is, if you pay within the due date, then 940 rupees. If you pay beyond the due date, it is 990 rupees. If a fellow missed the due date and goes and pay, he has to pay what? 990 rupees. What is collected extra? 50 rupee flat late fee. For what? Not honoring the payment within the due date. So, whenever payment is not of receipt, which is time of supply, date of receipt will become your time of supply. So, a service transaction, not covered by general entry, not covered by reverse charge, not covered by your, not covered by your voucher, not covered by your additional consideration. Then where it will get covered? A fraudulent transaction. Somebody provided service, collected money, not reported to government. Is it possible, sir? Yes. We have some commercial coaching centers. We have some educational institution. We have some various service providers. We have some service providers of all those private school related tuition centers, sporting academies. These fellows are all collected, not in a very big way they do fraud, some small fraud, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 8 lakhs. They collect money, but they are not reported to government. Government says they identify, government will know how the fellow has cheated and all. The moment government says, if they accept and they pay the amount, the day in which they pay the tax will become type of supply. Otherwise, the revenue belong to which month? That month return filing due date will become time of supply. Sir, somewhere I read this, I already told. Your section 12.4, 12.5, 12.6 is equal to 13.4, 13.5, 13.6. 12.4, 12.5, 12.6, you will use a word time of supply of goods. 13.4, 13.5, 13.6, you will use a word time of supply of service. But for this, no difference. This sums up your complete discussion on time of supply of goods and services. So from a CAinter perspective, the next topic that we are going to discuss is not relevant. If you want, it will take 10 minutes for discussion. If you want, you can stay with us. Otherwise, you can switch out and switch back in if you want. I'll leave it to you. So points for our discussion is a very simple section. 10-15 minutes it will take. That's all. From a CAinter perspective. This topic is not applicable for CAinter. For all those CMA, CS, and all your beginners, definitely this topic is important and applicable. Now, change in the rate of tax. Now, will there be a change in the rate of tax? Yes, definitely there will be changes in rate of tax. When a change in rate of tax is possible? There are many situations change in rate of tax will be possible. Now, I'll give you situations. Take up a country like India. Before implementing GST or during implementing GST, we went for many rate changes. Now, if you're going to ask me, what was the reason for many rate changes when we go back and ask that question? The reasons are many. Government would have thought in a different way. Government would have want to tax the product at a different rate, but they end up taxing at a higher rate. They want to tax at a lower rate, they went and taxed it higher rate. All confusions were there. Now, getting into your changes in rate of tax. Section 40 is going to go on a conventional mode of discussion. Very simple. 3 transactions are here. For anything to be done, this 3 alone is required. Goods or services has to be completed. Invoice has to be raised. If service is completed before change in rate of tax, Payment is also made before change in rate of tax. Invoice is issued afterwards. Then, before change in rate of tax, you have a old rate. After change in rate of tax, you have a new rate. Which rate will be applicable? We will have doubt. Don't go and read the section and all. Among these three, where two falls, that will become your rate of tax. Sir, I am not able to understand. Sir. Invoice raised before, supply done before, payment is received after. Rate of tax will be old rate. Sir, supply done before, invoice and payment is after. Then rate of tax will be what? New rate. Sir, supply done before, payment before, but invoice after. Old rate. Supply before, invoice before, payment after. Old rate. Invoice before, payment and supply after. New rate. You can play this game. This is called as rule of majority or 2/3 rule. No, sir, I will read only. Okay, read. You read also, you will understand that only. New rate. Supply of goods and services, invoice old, before change in rate of tax. Payment is after change in rate of tax, new. Only one point I want you to carefully understand is, this section 14 is applicable whenever there is a change in rate of tax. That is to say, earlier my goods was taxable at 18%. This particular day onwards, my goods is taxable at 12%. Earlier, my goods was liable to be taxed at 24%. After this date, my goods was taxable at 18%. So, whenever there is a upward movement or downward movement, I don't bother about it. But there is a change in rate of tax. You can ask these questions to you. Supply is completed or not? Supply of goods or services completed or not? Get an answer for it. Invoice raised or not? Get an answer for it. Payment received or not? Get an answer for it. Sir, invoice raised, payment received, but supply later. Old rate. Invoice raised, but supply and payment later. New rate. So, do I need to take back invoice? You have to either take back invoice and issue an amended invoice, or you have to raise simply a debit note for this and to increase, collect more tax. But my contention is 2/3 rule or rule of majority will help you to cross over your section 14. So this sums up the whole discussion on time of supply of goods, time of supply of services, and how to determine how to determine your rate of tax as per section 14, which is not applicable for scheme of discussion on GST valuation. Section 15 of CGST Act. Let me repeat. Section 15 of CGST Act discuss about valuation. So, as far as section 15 is concerned, only two conditions are spelled out in section 15. Any money paid or payable, any money paid or payable for a supply will be accepted as a transaction value. So what is liable to GST? Transaction value is liable to GST. Under section 15, what is liable to GST means transaction value is liable to GST. And moreover, in case of how the transaction value is determined, any money paid or payable for such supply shall be accepted as transaction value. Make a point here. Any money paid or payable. Any money paid or payable shall be accepted as transaction value. Where supplier and recipient are not related. When supplier and recipient are not related, price is the sole consideration of sale. Only two conditions. Let me repeat. Section 15, subsection 1 comes with two cumulative conditions. The supplier and recipient of supply are not related. The buyer and seller of the goods are not related. When supplier and recipient is not related, price is the sole consideration of sale, then the transaction value will be accepted. Already discussed about the term related. Employer and employee is relative. Legally recognized partners are relative. Holding company, subsidiary company, relative. Jointly controlled by a company, relative. Jointly controlled company is relative. Where one person and another person are related person. If supplier and recipient are related, then they don't satisfy section 15. Section 15 simply says, what is liable to GST? The supply of goods or services will be accepted as transaction, where supplier and recipient are not related. Supplier and recipient are not related. Price is the sole consideration of supply. Money paid, price paid, that is the sole consideration of supply. Apart from money, the person should not receive any other additional consideration. A supplier who was supplying services supplied his services of, let's say, transportation services, collected 3,000 rupees plus a mobile worth rupees 5,000. Collected 3,000 rupees amount plus a mobile worth 5,000. Actually, he has provided services worth 7,000. No, sorry, 8,000. Collected 3,000 rupees plus mobile worth 5,000. Has he provided services worth the 8,000? Definitely yes. He has provided services which are worth more than that amount. No. What I want to drive home here is, in case of services like this or transactions like this, the price paid is the sole consideration. If you go and check, price paid is not the sole consideration, because apart from money 3,000, there is an additional consideration called as mobile phone comes into play. So, can this be accepted as transaction value? No, rejected. The law is very clear. The section 15 is very, very clear. Supplier and recipient should not be related. Money should be the only consideration, or price should be the only consideration. Apart from price, I should not receive any other additional consideration. Then transaction value will be accepted. So, the net discussion of us is to ensure section 15 is satisfied. Money paid, actually paid, shall be accepted as transaction value, provided supplier and recipient are not related. Supplier and recipient are not related, and price paid is the sole consideration of supply. When price is the sole consideration for that supply, transaction value will be accepted. So nobody will bother about all these transactions. However, section 15 subsection 2 comes out and discuss about certain inclusions in value of supply. Something will be included in value of supply. What and all will be included in value of supply? When we go back to that, any duties, any taxes, paid by the supplier will be included in value of supply, but for GST taxes. All duties, all taxes paid will be included in your value of supply, but for GST related duties and taxes. For example, the cost of a product is 10,000 rupees. Somebody pay a municipal tax of 10%, 1,000 rupees. Then your value of supply is cost of product 10,000 plus the municipal tax paid, no, 1,000. That should also be added. On actually 11,000, you will calculate GST. Any duty, any tax paid would be included in your value of supply. One minute will come. Usually I'll carry water. Somehow I missed carry water before sitting. Sorry. See, section 15.2, you look like this. These are all additions made to transaction value. Originally, if the transaction value does not include this item, all this item will be added to determine this value. Okay. So, how to determine this value? So, sometimes supplier will collect money extra for various reasons. If in case he collects extra money for various reasons, yes, it will be included in your value. So, section 15.2 says, actually it has 5 additions, clause A, B, C, D, E, 5 additions. Section 15.2 says, all duties and taxes will be included in value. Duties, taxes paid will be included in value. Followed by 2. Any amount which the supplier is liable to pay is paid by recipient. That will be included in value. That is, actually that amount should be paid by the supplier, but supplier has not paid that amount now. Only who has paid the amount? Recipient has paid the amount. Any amount paid by the recipient on behalf of supplier will be included in value. Third, any incidental expenses or any money charged by the supplier will be included in value. Incidental expenses means, if you're going to ask me, many expenses. Transportation, loading, unloading, or your brokerage, commission, testing, installation, warranty, extra warranty, this, that, many things. All those incidental expenses in connection with supply, that will be included in your value of supply. After this, all those subsidies that are received and that subsidy which are directly connected with your product linked subsidy, apart from government related subsidy, it will be included in your value of supply. Any interest, late fee, penalty collected would be included in value of supply. If you carefully note, we have 5 things here. All duties and taxes apart from GST duties and taxes will be included in value of supply. Any amount paid by the recipient on behalf of supplier will be included in value of supply. Any incidental expenses in connection with supply will be included in value of supply. Any subsidy directly linked with the product will be included in value of supply except government subsidy. Followed by all interest, late fee, penalty will be included in value of supply except Yeah, all late fee, interest and penalty will be included in value of supply. So if you could able to understand that 5, good. Otherwise, my pet word, which I learnt from my friend, my own friend, was pista. Pista addition. What is this pista addition, sir? P stands for penalty, I stands for incidental expenses, S stands for subsidy, T stands for taxes and duties, A stands for any amount paid on behalf of the supplement. Pista. Pista addition. So pista will be added. Okay. If you don't like ordinary milk, have pista milk in the same fashion. My only suggestion is, I don't know how you're going to remember, but all these 5 items, if it collected separately, if it is received and the product is reduced, like subsidy and all, it will be included in your value of supplement. Done? Can we move forward? Yes. Moving forward, in case of discount, a point to be noted, in case of discount. In case of any discounts received, all those discount received or discount issued, given, will not be included in value of supply. So what kind of discounts we have? Broadly, we have 2 types of discount. A discount given before supply or at the time of supply. I would not say before supply, at the time of supply. A discount given at the time of supply, or a discount which is given post supply. 2 kinds of discount. Discount given at the time of supply or discount given post supply. See, when you're going to buy in bulk quantity, in the invoice itself, they'll give discount. 1 lakh rupee item, after discount, we are giving it to you for 80,000. If they say, if the 20,000 is separately shown in the invoice, then the 20,000 will not be liable to GST. 1 lakh minus the discount 20,000, balance 80,000 will be leviable to GST whenever discount is given at the time of invoice. At the time of supply, when discount is given, it will not be included in your value of supply, provided that discount will not be included in your value of supply, provided it is shown separately in the invoice. Now, let's take up a situation where discount is issued after supply. In case of invoice or discount is issued after supply. If there is going to be a after supply discount, so first of all, after supply discount, how it will be possible? See, a lot of us are not exposed to business. When we are exposed to business, you will understand there is something called as turnover discount. There is something called as quantity discount. There is something called as your additional discount for extra efforts. What are these discounts? If you want to basically understand, these discounts are nothing but discount given for or discount given to improve more sales. Let's take up a situation. A garment showroom, a very, very famous garment brand house says, if you buy from us more than 3 crore rupees in a year, or if you buy from us more than 5 crore rupee in a year, we will give you extra 2% discount. Month 1, I will not know, will I buy for 5 crores or not. By month end, when it is going to end, by month end, I will know, yes, I have achieved it. The moment when I achieved it, I am eligible for a post-supply discount. It's not at the time of supply discount, post-supply discount. In case of post-supply discount, only 3 requirements are needed. Supplier and recipient should be aware of discount. Supplier should refer the invoice and issue a credit note. Recipient who receives the credit note should reverse his input tax credit. If these 3 conditions are met, then the respective supplier can reduce post-supply discount from his value of supply. Condition 1, there has to be upfront understanding or agreement between supplier and recipient regarding to this post-supply discount. Upfront agreement should be present regarding post-supply discount. Second condition, the supplier should issue a credit note. Recipient should receive the credit note and reverse input tax credit. If this condition is satisfied, if this is met, then your post-supply discount can be reduced from value of supply. If the conditions are met, the post-supply discount can be reduced from value of supply. So, when it comes to discount, 2 types of discount we have. At the time of supply, post-supply. At the time of supply will be given, mentioned in invoice, simply done, over. Post-supply discount, 3 requirements. Supplier and recipient should be aware of it by way of entering into an agreement. Supplier issues credit note referring each invoices. Recipient reverse the ITs. Then supplier can reduce that from the value of supply. That discount, post-supply discount, shall not be included in value of supply. Can you able to appreciate this discussion? This sums up your core discussion on valuation. Let me repeat it for some of you in case joined later. Section 15.1 comes up with 2 conditions. Section 15.1 says transaction value will be accepted. What is transaction value? Any money paid or payable for a supply, where that supplier and recipient are not related. Supplier and recipient are what? Not related. Price is the sole consideration of supply. If these 2 conditions are satisfied, whatever number you have fixed as transaction value, that will be accepted by government. That might be low, that might be more, that might be equal to market. I am not bothered about it. When supplier and recipient are not related, price is the sole consideration, the transaction value will be accepted. Now, moving forward on this transaction, 15.2 talks of additions. Apart from the value, sometime they'll collect extra. Very simple. 10,000 rupees value of the fridge. To deliver the fridge at your home, they'll collect delivery charges 1,000 rupees. Now, that 1,000 rupees is what? Incidental expenses. It has to be what? Included in your value of supply. That's all. So, law simply says, in case of any money collected separately, what monies? Pista, penalty, incidental expenses, or subsidy linked with your product other than government subsidy, your duties and taxes other than GST related duties and taxes, any amount paid on behalf of the supplier. All this 5 will be included in your value of supply. Followed by, what will be then excluded from value of supply? What will be reduced from value of supply? Only 1 item, discount. Discount given at the invoice level will be reduced from value of supply. Discount given post-supply will be reduced provided 3 conditions are satisfied. Upfront, supplier and recipient will know. Second, supplier will issue a credit note. Recipient will reverse ITs. If all these conditions are met, then from the value, discount will also be reduced. Moving forward, if in case somebody fails to satisfy the above mentioned conditions, then Section 15, subsection 4 comes out and says the value will be determined as per valuation rules. Let me repeat. The value will be determined as per valuation rules. So there are separate set of valuation rules if supplier and recipient are related person. If the price is not the sole consideration or a value cannot be determined. How to determine value of supply if you have doubts? Then section 15.4 and 15.5 very clearly comes out and helps you that if value cannot be determined as per section 15.1, that is the general condition, value will be determined as per valuation. Similarly, section 15.5 says for certain transaction notified by government, value will be determined only as per valuation. So, two conditions satisfied, value will be determined as per section 15.1. Two conditions not satisfied, value will be determined as per valuation. Valuation rules are not applicable for CAinter, Chart Accountancy course. Inter people valuation rules is not applicable for all those CMA and CS people and beginners people. Yes, valuation rules are applicable, part and parcel of your discussion. For exams, you have to read. Now, valuation rules is a separate set which cannot be closed in next 10-15 minutes and all, requires an elaborate discussion of half an hour plus. We will do one thing, we will push this valuation rules to tomorrow's discussion. What we will do quickly is, any case, we have today's, all your MCQ and questions. We'll try to answer these MCQ and questions now. 1 minute. Hope all of you would have downloaded the time and value of supply, MCQ and practical problem from your description. Yes. So, to start with, determine the time of supply of service when services are received from an associated enterprise located outside India. Services are received from an associated enterprise located outside India. Date of entry of service in books of accounts of the recipient, date of payment, date of entry of service in the books of accounts of supplier, earlier of A and B. What is it? So, in case of reverse charge, there is an associated enterprise. The day in which entry made in the recipient's books of account or date of payment of these two, whichever is earlier. A and B would be your answer. A question similar to this question 2 we have discussed. I leave it to you for your choice of discussion. Almost I've did earlier. Then it will be a repetition. This question only I told earlier. Determine the time of supply of voucher when the supply with respect to the voucher is identified. If supply to a voucher of goods, time of supply of voucher. If supply is identified, if supply is identified, your time of supply will be date of issue of voucher. Where supply is not identified, determine the time of supply of voucher when the supply with respect to the voucher is not identified. When supply is not identified, then date of redemption of voucher will be time of supply. In case of receipt of payment, determine the date of such receipt. What is the date of receipt of payment? Date of entry in books of accounts, date of payment credited, whichever is earlier, or date of filing of return. Answer C, whichever is earlier. Determine the date of receipt of consideration by the supplier. Date on which receipt of payment is entered in books of accounts. Date on which receipt of payment is credited in bank account. Earlier of A and B, later of A and B, earlier of A and B. Followed by determine time of supply of service in case of RCM, date immediately following 60 days, or date of invoice or date of payment entered in books of account, earlier of A and C. Answer would be earlier of A and C. Value of supply under section 15 is wholesale price, retail price, MRP, transaction value. Transaction value. The value of supply should not include the value of supply. The value of supply shall include any non-GST taxes, duties, cess, fees charged separately, interest, late fee, penalty for delay in payment of consideration, subsidy directly linked to price, all of the above. 9. All of the above. Which of the following shall not be included in value of supply? Interest, late fee, commission, GST paid. GST paid will not be included in value of supply. Then, when can transaction value be rejected for computation of value of supply? When buyer and seller are related person, price is not the sole consideration. Where buyer and seller are related person or price is not the sole consideration, it can never be rejected when the goods are sold at a very low margin. Section 11 is a technical question. When price can be rejected? Among the two conditions, even a person does not satisfy one condition, price will be rejected. Answer will be B. When the buyer and seller are related, it will be rejected. Or price is not a sole consideration, again rejected. Meaning thereby, when buyer and seller and price is the sole consideration, both are satisfied, then only transaction will be accepted. Which of the following statement is correct? Section 15 of CGST Act prescribes different provisions for valuation of goods and service. Has different provision for valuation of supply. Section 15 prescribes same set of provision for valuation of goods or service. D, A and B. Which is correct? For goods, services, same provision. Discount given after supply is deducted from value of supply if such discount is given as per agreement before supply. Such discount is linked to invoice. Proportionate ITC is reversed. All of the above. Which conditions should be satisfied? 13. All of the above. What deductions are allowed from transaction value? Discount, packing charges, both A and B. Only discount offered to customer, subject to such conditions, it will get reduced. If value cannot be determined as per section 15.1, value can be determined as per section 15.2, read along with chapter 4 of determination of valuation rules. So these are all some of the MCQ. We have a little practical problem, which are all some of them appeared in earlier exam paper. We have attached here. I would recommend you to do it. Otherwise, as part of tomorrow's discussion, we will take it up. So until then, I'm signing off from you. Thanks for your continued support and coming in large numbers and encouraging us. And if you have any doubts, as usual, you can put on the comment box. If you like the video, if you could able to understand the bandwidth, clarity, everything is there, give a small thumbs up. It will encourage us. And if you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe to the channel. Followed by, if you feel it would be great use of to your friends or somebody who's been preparing for exams or who's want to know about GST, kindly share the videos and I'll also encourage them to subscribe. So I thank the channel for giving us this opportunity to share our views on this lockdown time and supporting from the back end in a very great way. I more specifically place on record to the channel head and the channel team for working behind vehemently on many things, including it. So these are all some points I thought I would share to you. So until tomorrow at 4 p.m., we will come back and make our beginning on valuation rules and then get into input tax credit should be the discussion for tomorrow. Until then, signing off. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.